for all of us, regardless of whom we facilitate or whom we teach. And as we move forward as those facilitators and teachers, and we're trying to think, what do I need to make it? We're trying to schedule that in the future meetings. We have 3 more meetings that will be like this. We have 2 meetings that we'll do on a different day, maybe a little more relaxed, hands-on kind of thing. Things like learning how to listen, how to be effective in our ability to facilitate. There's nothing worse, and you know, we've all been there as both the learner and the instructor. You ask a question, everybody just sits there. You want it? So this will also maybe give you, I'll do a session with some techniques on how to be an effective questioner, how to accept people for wherever they are in their walk, how to be neutral in that acceptance, so we're not condemning someone or praising someone. We're all able to get what we need without being up or down for ourselves or for our learners. And so that's really what this is about. It's not about wasting your time and spending 6 hours together for the next year. And what we're doing is not a today or tomorrow or next month thing. We're looking to make this a 1 to 3 year process, so that we're a different learning group and a different facilitator group than we are today. For the past 9 days, I've been with a group where their motto was, whom do you serve? And we're already good. Let's take it to group. And I think that's really where we're headed here. You would not be asked again and again to be teachers or be asked to be an initial teacher if you weren't already good. But we want you to be fed too. Have you ever shown up for a class and before you got to class, you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to do this today? Well, the answer is you still may have that because you've had a rough day. But when you get in there, they'll never know, because you are exactly where they need you to be, because you have been filled up yourself by coming to these classes. So Ted will start or run us through some kind of fun things that maybe we knew but were not really formalized in a word. He's got I think he's doing the thing with the stages, and that's really kind of fun, because some of you, all of you are working with children to one degree or another, and what you may want to put in there is dummy, idiot, silly, goofy. And that may be what you think at any given moment with your own children, which is sometimes I think those things are my children. But it also sometimes when you walk in and a kid is way off in the field, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, how do I bring that kid back? These stages kind of give us that chance to know where they are, where they might be spiritually, and where we may or may not be spiritually. So if you have questions, we encourage you to ask during the presentation, but also after the presentation. The last thing I want to tell you with your evaluation, you're welcome to fill it in today. They are anonymous, we ask, unless you want to put your name on it. We also ask that if you have a comment or a question or a concern in the mailbox, they heard this morning, the mailbox for Sam and I, because I am 5'4", probably 3.5 at that age, is the top cubicle on the far right. That starting on Wednesday, there will be envelopes in there that will say whatever Sam and I are, the code, whatever we are, Bible leadership. And you can put it in an envelope and seal it. So if you have, something happened in your class you want us to know about, or maybe you're just not being fed, you want us to know about it, that's where it goes, so we can take it to the correct church leader to deal with. Or maybe if we think this is stupid and you and Sam shouldn't have these, you can put that in there too. We're probably going to have them anyway, but you can send it to us. We'll read it. And if you just need to talk to us or want us, we're always there. We're meeting every Wednesday with John, Ted, Sam, and I. We met back every 2 weeks as time moves on, because we don't need to. But we're looking to help revitalize you, but also revitalize the kids. And sometimes, especially during COVID, I've had some of those days where it was hard to get excited. But what we're doing here is exciting us, so we're hoping it excites you, which will then excite others who may come and join us. So thank you very much for being here. If you want more food, go ahead and get it. We don't mind you going back and forth while we're talking. At least I don't mind. Ted probably doesn't either.
can't believe you can't remember your title. I mean,
I know you think I would
never
remember
forget
that.
anything.
It's I know it's something something of Bible studies, right?
Well, you're the Bible study discipleship directors.
Oh, there you go. That's what we are.
And the altar comes before the sermon most of the time.
I'm note taker.
So I'm just glad I never forget anything. You know,
I thought it fit well with your message as far
This
as
one of these is
your
yours.
message was, and it's, we're so concerned about the
the letter.
Yeah,
That's right. We're just rolling with it.
so, you mix it up on purpose to bring it to your message.
I was trying to think, how am I going to segue into this? Because I knew I was going to start talking about the Constitution and bylaws. And Chuck started into that deacon stuff. And I said, this is great. So as soon as he got done, I was like, yeah. It's a great segue.
I saw Kim take the mask off and start to.
So Flory and Sam's box up there on the right hand corner, down in the old kitchen, it says Bible Study and Discipleship Director.
Oh, now I'll write that down.
That's what it is.
Many times.
And I say this because I want to begin the session by thanking Sam and Flory and Toby Burrell. Toby was the Sunday school, used to be our Sunday school director, Sunday school superintendent was the title. And we did 2 or 3 of these. We were trying to figure out how to help encourage and equip you guys. And then COVID hit, and our nomination process was kicking in again. And Sharon, Toby's wife, had an issue in the family with her having to care for her parent, and so Toby couldn't be nominated again. Sam and Flory stepped up, and the church went through the process of changing from Sunday school to Sunday morning Bible study, and changing it from Sunday school director, which just kind of pigeonholed the Sunday, to Bible study and discipleship directors, to kind of broaden our vision, take in the Wednesday night stuff, take in what we're hoping someday to have, weekday Bible studies and Bible studies in people's homes. And as we equip you guys, well, we'll talk more about that, of growing our pool of facilitators and leaders in the church too. So, but anyway, about Toby, the reason it's that top right box was when we were redoing these, Toby said, well, just put mine up there, I'm tall enough to reach it. So,
I'm okay.
we'll have to remember that. We'll just switch them out.
If I'm on tippy toes, I can feel all the way to the back.
Just put Flory will just pull those off and stick them on whichever ones you want.
There you go, Judy.
We'll get Rose to rearrange that so that works. So, we did a session this morning for adult Bible study and discipleship leaders. And wanted to do this session, this luncheon session for all of our children and youth leaders. And next Sunday morning during the Bible study hour, I'm going to take kind of a spin off of what we do and have a session with our parents, a quarterly preview. So you've got a schedule there in your little packet of I think there's 3 sheets in there. You got your note sheet, you got the little schedule for the trainings, and then you got one of our worksheets we're going to touch on today. So, parents will be next Sunday. So, the first question is, why are we doing this? And even before we ask that, I'm going to ask my wife to say a prayer for us, give us a blessing and pray that we get everything in the right order this afternoon.
God, we're thankful that we could be here today. Thank you for our leadership. Thank you for your presence. Just pray that you would speak to us individually and as a group. In Christ's name.
Thank you. So, why are we doing this? And it's your luncheon time this morning. The people had to get out of their seats they usually sit in and come in here and be with Bob and have a unified study. But 2 big things for you to take note of. One, we want to equip our leaders to lead others to encounter Christ. We want to equip you, all of our facilitators, to lead others to encounter Christ. And the other big thing is anchoring everything we do in the profound love and goodness of God. So we're here to try to equip leaders to lead others to Christ. And we want to do that by encouraging growth in our existing leaders and you guys, maybe offering you a skill set that you want or that you desire. Maybe you have a skill set that you can share with the group in a future session that will help us be better facilitators, leaders, so that we can help people encounter Christ. Help our children, help our students, their families have that encounter with Christ. Christ will do the heart changing. He says, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto myself. So that's our job, is to elevate Christ. So we're equipping, and I think Flory touched on this. You'll see on your paperwork there, a lot of places I put leader / facilitator. In the adults especially, they don't see themselves always as teachers or leaders. They see themselves as facilitators. They're among their peers. More often, y'all are seen as teachers by the younger ones. You know, you're their teacher. So we kind of, that's interchangeable language, the teacher, leader, facilitator. But we want to develop new leaders as well. We had a new leader in adult, a potential, somebody that just said, I want to learn about teaching and maybe be able to teach in the future. Had somebody call and express interest about joining this meeting today. Didn't make it here, but you know, we've got people that we want to develop more leaders and have more children's leaders and have more student leaders that can do the things, come alongside and help. So we hope to enlist some of y'all that are skilled. Allison's a professional educator. Judy was retired. Mike taught. He was a trainer all his life. There may be a little skill set that you can share with us in the future that will help us in what we're trying to do here. So, hopefully, what we do in these sessions will allow our participants to benefit from leaders that are equipped. So we're just equipping ourselves. I know that, my story is, I knew when I sensed a call to serve in some type of ministry, I knew the first thing I needed to do was prepare. So I did my master's degree starting well, because I wanted to be ready for what I was doing and have something to offer. And that's what we're doing. We're just preparing. We're just trying to equip ourselves. So that's part of the why we're doing this. So bullet 2 there is, what is an effective leader or participant? And when you think of an effective, it's not participant. When you think of an effective facilitator, what are some words that come to mind, just real quick? This is popcorn. If I can run the popcorn device. I'm a popper. Honest. Honest, and you work with high schoolers. So you got to be, they can see right through you, right? You can't go over there and start seeing all the time. All right. What else makes for a good approachable? Approachable. What else?
Too much time without, something we said in Sunday school this morning. Don't you feel like you can ask a question, like if you want to say something to me or listen? That's fine. There's no wrong questions. I come to us.
I love you guys because we are approachable. We try to be. The kids know that. It's Castle and places too. What else? What makes a good facilitator?
I think it's important to listen to the kids as they give their prayer requests and stuff, to actually see what's important to them.
So this whole idea of listening skills, because sometimes you have to hear the words that are being said, but you have to hear the intent, what they're really getting at there. What else? What's that?
Engaging.
Engaging, just like I am right now. Here over lunch. Joe.
You gotta break the ice before you give them the thing.
strict with the kids, because, you know, it's good to have some rapport. So, you know, we can go on and we'll have sessions on, you know, some of these things, but this person that leads our children and students to have an encounter with Christ. That's, you know, that's what we're saying is an effective leader. If we're doing whatever it takes to help them encounter Christ in an effective way, and that may be different from one age group or kid to the next. So, how do we do this effectively? How do we lead effectively? How do we facilitate effectively? And there is what I was saying a while ago, this venture that we're starting out on today, we're doing this together. It's not an article that me or Sam or Floyd are telling you. I'm saying let's start this journey together. Today is to cast some vision and maybe look at a thing or two to launch us. And then at the end, Sam's going to have the feedback from y'all of what in the future will help us. So we'll be doing this together as we move ahead. So equipping, leading others to encounter Christ. And then the other big thing is anchoring everything that we do in the profound love and goodness of God. And I want to unpack that a little bit. We have a church mission statement. It's very simple. It says that we are making disciples through worship, welcome, and witness. And there's a lot in there. You know, the Great Commission is to go ye therefore and make disciples. That's what Christ told us. That was his command for the church to do. Go make disciples. And we say that we do that through our worship, our welcome, and witness, which is everything that we do as a church. But different churches come from different places. Different people come from different places. So I want to do, this is the place, I want to do a little exercise real quick. Thanks to Subway for providing the ratio for today. And on your paper there, the God is. Just fill that in for me. God is what? God is love. God is, what is it?
Faithful.
God's faithful. God is
Caring, compassion.
Overachieving there.
God is. It's what?
Our Redeemer.
Our Redeemer.
Accepts us as we are.
So we could go on with this. There are other ways people describe God, but Pastor John is adamant that everything that we do is kind of based on this idea that it flows out of the profound love and goodness of God. We didn't get goodness up here, but some people say God is good. God is love. You could say God is just. God is angry. God is whatever. And different people latch on to different things, and that's where they're coming from. But when we're doing discipleship as your shepherds, I know this is where John's coming from, it's where I'm coming from, that we want to equip each other to lead people to have an encounter with Christ. And we want to anchor that in the profound love and goodness of God. So that's our starting point. That's a little bit of that vision. And as Floyd said, you know, today I just want to do this introduction today, get your feedback, future, and hopefully our vision is that over the next 24, 36 months to walk through a process to where we're growing, where people are joining us and growing, where the classes we lead are excited and growing, and we're equipped to do that. And and you know, I have to grow to be able to do that. Where I'm at now, and where we are as a church and a team of student and children's ministers, I think we have room to grow. Or do y'all think we've arrived and we just need to go on home? We got it licked, right? So let's join together here in this, and that's a little bit of the vision of what we're going with. So you've got your little schedule in there. I believe it's part of your packet. You can kind of see, we knew today kind of a few of the topics to touch on, and then we also knew that we're going to try to pass on some of what I'm going to try to give you a chance today too. If you've got something you want us to pass on to your parents next week, get it to them this week. If it's a schedule of what you're teaching or just anything. If you want to come talk for 3 to 5 minutes next week, Sunday morning, to welcome parents to what you're doing, or send a representative, that kind of thing. But here's our sessions. We've got Sunday, followed by the parent preview. Then we've got a Sunday evening session. Then we've got 2 more Sunday morning sessions, another Sunday evening session in the spring, and then one in May, followed by all those. 4 of those are followed by the parent previews, but that's how it goes. And we'll be filling in the topics and content based on your feedback. So, cool. So this next little section on stages of faith, we'll spend a few minutes here. I guess this is kind of I want to use the word, this is the practical part of what we're doing, maybe something to learn and equip you, but it's kind of theoretical, but we'll give you some theory to help you be practical, okay? I guess, I don't know how to say that. That's what's getting ready to happen, though. And as we touched here on the stages of faith, this is not, we'll do a session on this sometime, but this is just to give us a little brief introduction for 2 reasons. To help us think about where our participants in our classes are and their families. Because we're not just working with these kids. You know, we're working with their families. And we'll say more about that. Knowing where they are, but then also for us. I realized with us, we're younger, some of us, and we need to see.
Sorry.
Well, this morning.
I'm just thinking I'm not in that category.
This morning, it was more older folks teaching, some of the older Jim Mills and some of those folks. But we got a whole spread in here of ages, and it'll help us see something about ourselves too, I think. So, but this is just enough so that, just a little introduction here. There's a question there. How does God work through natural human development and through supernatural means to bring a person to himself? Is that question on the paper? So, how does somebody have an encounter with Christ? Can we facilitate that? Or is it just a God thing? Can Lizzie do something in her class that will help that, make that more likely to happen? Or should she just lay the lesson down and say, here, y'all read this? Here's the Bible, y'all read this. It's God's Word. It's life-changing. But Joe can't get by with that, is. And Allison in their pre-K class can. Here's your Bible, kids. We got 40 minutes. Read away. There's something else that's going to happen there probably to make it more likely for them to have an encounter with Christ. So, what I want to touch on is called Stages of Faith. And Stages of Faith was a book written by Dr. James Fowler. It came out in 1981. Has anybody ever heard of that resource before? I encountered it in college early on, unfortunately. But after he was a Methodist minister, he went on to be he's a scholar, world-renowned scholar in all these places, wrote lots of books. But in this idea, he sought to develop this idea of a developmental process in our faith, stages that people go through in their faith walk. And once he started that in the 80s, there's been this whole body of study and stuff that's come out of it. Other people picking up the mantle and digging deeper into that. And those are some interesting things that we can look into sometimes. But you'll see that chart you have. I think it's in your packet. Go ahead and flip over to that. It's titled, you see the chart with the summary table of Dr. James Fowler's stages of faith? Y'all got that? Is that in your pack?
Yes.
Okay. See if I can project this up here for you. We're going to just glance at these. What I want to do, let's see on Allison's here. Yeah, you've got a column there with the stages, 0 through 6, like stage 4, 5, 6. You've got the second column. We're going to name these in just a minute. And then there's a column there for what he actually called them. It's got the age that stage is likely to be seen in. Not always, as you'll hear more about here, but the age that often happens, and then a description of it. So, just for fun, we're going to look at these descriptions, and we'll just take turns reading through them out loud, and you can think about it for a second. Kind of like we popcorn a minute ago. You can name that stage for us then. We'll give it a little nickname. So, I'll help you remember. So, who will, I'm going to ask Alice. Miss Alice, will you just read that first one for us?
Sure.
You're not going to sit at the front table?
She can pray, her mouth is full.
All right, you're next on this. You're back there.
No, I'm coming right now.
All right, so this is zero.
Mine's smaller anyway, so.
It's up here on the plan too. Right here. Yeah, I gave you the short one.
I know, I'm good, I'm really not complaining, we're just teasing you. Through loving care from parents and other adults in their lives, young children start to build a lived experience of trust, courage, hope, and love. Conversely, negative experiences will cause one to develop distrust about the universe and the divine.
Okay. So, 0 to 2, what kind of faith does, we're talking about the kids in the baby nursery, right? The infant nursery. A newborn, 1-year-old, 2-year-old. How do you develop faith? You rock them, you hold them, you care for them, you love them. This whole idea, they figured out that even though these kids can't talk and express, that what happens in that 0 to 2 stage of their life, what's the converse if they're missing those things? In their home, say their home is a place where they are neglected or abused, or they're not being loved or robbed. That's going to set things up. This whole idea of trust and mistrust, it's built in before they can even speak often. So what can we do here? We can rock them, we can sing songs to them. A lot of mothers now play music, sing songs with children while they're in the womb, and families do it, read to them. And we can do these things in a young stage so that they develop that trust. So, just looking at that, just real quick, what would be a name you can give that stage? Just a little nickname.
Nursery.
Huh?
Nursery.
Nursery? Comes from nurture. That comes from nurture.
Well, nurturing.
Empty slate.
Empty slate. All right. All right. You may have you got your sheets to go off. So we're going to say that's the empty slate, nursery stage. How about somebody way back there in the back? Melissa? How about this? How about stage 1? Oh, and do this too. Tell us the age on this one as you go.
So the 2 to 7-year-olds, the cognitive development of children of this age is such that they are unable to think abstractly and are generally unable to see the world from anyone else's perspective. Faith is not a thought-out set of ideas. Instead, it's a set of impressions
Do you see that in your 5-year-olds? That they can't think abstractly, they think concretely. They usually can't see the world from somebody else's perspective. Faith isn't this not thought out set of ideas, impressions. They couldn't explain their faith to you, but they could say, "I love to go to church." They feel it. They're learning from the adults in their lives. And the rituals we do, they may just hearing the music, and they're learning how to worship. They're learning your routines you do in your classroom. They're learning from that. So what would you name that stage? Just a nickname for it.
Active learners.
What else? So we get a little nickname for that.
Sponges.
The sponges. Are the sponges at that age? They soak in what's going on around them. All right, let's try this next one. Try this next one. There it is. So this is stage 2, is that right?
Yes.
What's our age on this one? Just roughly? I mean, these ages aren't hard and fast, it's just where this typically seen. I mean, Joe could be in stage 2, you know, but it's where it's typically seen. It's where it's typically seen. I'm probably still in stage 1, I don't know. So, Joe, help us out with this one.
7 to 12 years old. Children in this age are able to start to work out the difference between verified facts and things that might be more fantasy or speculation. At this age, children's source of religious authority starts to expand past parents and trusted adults to others in their community like teachers and friends. Like the previous stage, faith is something to be experienced. At this stage, it is because children think in concrete and literal ways. Faith becomes the stories told and the rituals practiced.
What stands out to you about this, or what's the nickname for it? You might tell a 2 to 7-year-old, you might convince them that Santa Claus is coming. Now you get the 7 to 12-year-old, the further they move down through there, they're starting to wonder, how's he getting down the chimney? Now, are you sure there's Santa Claus coming? You know, things like that are starting to happen here. Their religious authorities, just other trusted adults. They've got their 3rd grade teacher at church. They got their 3rd grade teacher at school. You know, whatever. They're kind of soaking in those stories and the rituals that are going on. If you ask a 9-year-old what's Christianity, and this is the only place they've ever been, they can tell you about the service and what's going on, but they don't have any more perspective on that. What would you call this stage? Just a nickname.
Emerging cripple fingers.
Emerging?
Cripple fingers.
Emerging?
Almost.
You said critical thinkers? Yeah.
Questioners, they begin to question everything.
Is this one that's, sometimes get called why is this guy? Well, why? You call it that side. So the emerging ones, 7 to 12. See, this next one's a big chunk. All right, who's gonna try this one for us? Let's see here. Mike, you gonna give it a whirl?
Sure.
What's our age here?
12 plus. Generally starts at about the age of 13 and goes until 18. However, some people stay at this stage for their entire life. Unlike previous stages, people at this stage are able to think abstractly. What were once simple, unrelated stories and rituals can now be seen as a more cohesive narrative about values and morals. With abstract thinking comes the ability to see the layers of meaning in the stories, rituals, and symbols of their faith. At this stage, people start to have the ability to see things from someone else's perspective. This means that they can also match what others think about them and their faith. People at this stage claim their faith as their own instead of just being what their family does. However, the faith that is claimed is usually still the faith of their family. Issues of religious authority are important to the people at this stage. For younger adolescents, that authority still resides mostly with their parents and important adults. For older adolescents and adults at this stage, authority resides with friend and religious community. For all people at this stage, religious authority relies mostly outside of them personally.
So, interesting there. Generally, your teenage years. However, some people stay at this stage for their entire life. And this, I should have said it before, but I want to emphasize it now. This is not seen as, there's no judgment here of that it's better to be a stage 5 than a stage 4. This is just descriptive. This is research, and it's just describing what we see. And it's okay if somebody's a stage 2 or 3 and they're 21 years old. You know, that's where they are. And we really won't say so much about it in here, but in the adult session, we said, we emphasized that point because when you're teaching adults, you just realize where they are, and you may have adults at different places in the room, and that's okay. How do you facilitate them to have an encounter with Christ? So we're going to really focus on these first 4 stages that we've touched on because we teach birth to 18-year-olds. And most often these are the ones that we will see, these stages. And this is the stage, I get to deal with this one a lot with the middle school and high school kids. And when we launch a year, often when I'm introducing a session, I'll say something that, hey, this is the time in your life that you've come to church all your life, and now you're in the middle school and high school group. This is where you can, where you own your faith. It becomes, it's not mom and daddy's faith anymore. You've been brought to church all your life. Now you ask the questions you need to ask, find out what you need to find out, so you can own your faith and it becomes yours. And the quicker they can do that, the better off, the bigger chance they're going to have of not falling flat on their face when they step out into the world and they've just been living, going to church because mom and dad made me go to church. If they have a deep faith that they've worked through, they've asked their questions, this is where we want them to ask about creation and evolution and you name it. You name your topic. This is where we want that to come up, and where we want to talk about it with the appropriate ages, so that they'll have a step on that and not just be out there on their own when they leave home. So anyway, what's a good nickname for this stage? See what's going on.
Maybe like seekers, since they're looking to establish their own faith.
Seekers.
I love to see this. That's one of the fun things about working with students, especially high school, is most of our kids have been brought up in homes where they've been surrounded by this, and they have to have a room up there on the 3rd floor to throw their questions out there. The more space we give for them to do that, Matt and Lizzie too, middle school. The things we experience in high school, they're experiencing in 6th grade now, or 4. So questions come earlier nowadays. Do you see any of your students in any of these? Anything just really interesting or jumps out to anyone about these four so far?
I think probably the age group that Joe works with and that we work with. You see some of the things from stage one because we have such a big span when you're talking about kindergarten through 5th grade. And sometimes that can be difficult. So you want to be able to challenge the older ones to start thinking, and yet you don't want everything to be over the head of these kids that are in kindergarten. And so last year, it was separated. We had enough kids. On Wednesday night, we could separate it into 2 groups, and this year, with fewer kids, we're combined. So it can be a bit of a challenge exactly on what you do.
Absolutely. So, what skills can we develop to?
Have to do a little bit of both.
COVID put the crush on us because it dropped our numbers. So it's always a challenge when you combine middle school and high school. Because you got the 6th grader and you got the 12th grader. It's always a challenge in Joe's class because you got kids that can't read, and kids that can read. You can't say read this to everybody in class.
Right.
So, that challenge is there. And the more we grow and we can, justify having, or it just makes sense to have, to break out K2 or K3, K2 and then 3-5, and we have more trained facilitators and teachers. That's the kind of thing Sam and Floyd will be watching, and just like we had to combine as the numbers drop. It's a small country church, they've got K-12 together, the old one-room schoolhouse.
But it is an interesting time to have that span of age when it's small, because you can team them up and like Tag can share with Drew, and Drew will listen to what Tag says, and that gives Tag an opportunity to share and work on his skills of talking. So it's getting that group together and, letting them do that. I don't know, that depends on how you do your classes.
Yeah, but that's a skill and a technique, and there's a way to do that, to have older learners helping facilitate what's going on in your
Part of that is empowering kids to find their voice and being able to describe it. So that is incumbent upon us as leaders and teachers to set that environment where your kids feel, A, they fit. The older kids, because they know more than the younger kid, it gives them an opportunity to share, make them feel valued, make them feel, that's important for us to give that the older kid an opportunity to share that. And for the, for the younger student, and the older student, it gives them an opportunity to talk and interact in a manner that might not work there. Kids find out when you're in high school. You said the 6th grader and the 12th grader have not 6 years of age, it's a gulf of maturity most of the time, So.
There's a whole dynamic in the youth ministry where you're trying to have your sophomore, juniors, and seniors taking leadership. We've had Alec Lade led Wednesday night before, because you want to bring them on into those places. Let's get 4, 5, and 6 real quick. I kind of held up there because this is kind of where we're hanging out for our participants. Now, as we go through this, think about us. And because we want to, I think I would like to do a whole session somewhere down the road on just your personal spiritual growth, because you can only take people where you've been, and we've got to take care of ourselves too. So, what's the next one there? Who will read the stage 4?
I'll read.
Okay.
People in this stage start to question their own assumptions around the faith tradition. Along with questioning their own assumptions about their faith, people at this stage start to question the authority structures of their faith. This is often the time that questions they are asking are not to their liking. Greater maturity is gained by rejecting some parts of their faith while affirming other parts. In the end, the person starts to take greater ownership of their own faith journey.
All right, there was a sentence in there. This is often a time that someone will leave their religious community if the answers to their questions are not, or they are asking are not to their liking. The answers to their questions are not to their liking. There's lots of ways to say that answers to their questions that they can't ask their questions. This is our juniors and seniors in high school. Those people getting ready to
college students.
This is your college students. This is the people getting ready to launch or that they've launched. Go ahead and count up in your mind all the 20 to 28-year-olds that were in the worship service this morning. Yeah. Where were you when you were 23? Which church were you attending? You know, this is a time.
Well, it also might hit people younger now because of the internet, and they watch a lot of stuff and ask questions on almighty Google.
Almighty Google.
So they might be getting interesting answers.
Lots of things going on here. I used the example this morning of the adults. I grew up in an Amish community, and I'm beginning to wonder when I'm 23, am I going to leave the Amish community? I was born Catholic. I've always been in the Baptist church. I've always been in this Baptist church, but I hear that there's some that do things different. You know, is everything that Mr. Joe says or Mike says on Wednesday night, is that the gospel truth? Is that right? You know, people begin wondering, and then nowadays the kids, that's the first place they're going is Google. And there's, I mean, if you've ever searched any faith issue on there, type them in, and you see what you get. You're getting the whole gamut. Here may be Pastor John Tagliarini's sermon, and right here may be, you know, Joe Blow, whatever, just saying his piece. And there's no filter on that thing. So anyway, what would we call this stage here, stage 4? Just a nickname.
I'm inspired by our bumper sticker, and bumper stickers. It's a question of authority. It's what they're at.
Question authority. Well,
Rebels.
the rebels. I started to say the losers because they're losing their faith.
They're redefining.
Yeah, redefining. I don't know if you get on many podcasts right now, just so y'all know, the big term is deconstruction. Oh, I'm going through my deconstruction. My deconstruction looked like this. And then the reconstruction. And it is, that's legit. That's what, the words get overused though after a while. When I went to seminary, one of the first big talks we had was they used the analogy of your suitcase. They said, you come here with your theological suitcase, and they said, what you're going to do is you're going to take every piece out of that suitcase. You're going to pick it up, you're going to look at it, you're going to decide if it's something you want to keep. When you leave here, then you're going to repack that suitcase. But there may be some things in that suitcase when you're here that after you go through this process, your suitcase might look different. Is your faith the same now that it was 20 years ago? This is natural. It happens. There's some things we realize don't belong or they do belong. 5. Okay.
35 plus. People do not usually get to this stage until the early 30s. This stage is when the struggles and questioning of stage 4 give way to a more comfortable place. Some answers have been found, and the person at this stage is comfortable following that. All the answers might not be easily found. Comfortable knowing that all the answers might not be easily found. In this stage, the strong need for individual self-reflection gives way to a sense of the importance of community and faith development. People at this stage are also much more open to other people's faith perspectives. This is not because they are moving away from their faith, but because they have a realization that other people's faiths might inform and deepen their own.
What would you call this one? Just a nickname. Knowing the answers might not easily be found. Answers might not easily found. My 2-year-old died. My teenager was killed in a car wreck. My parent died. There's not easy answers for those things that there might have been when you were in a different place. Can I use your example?
Yeah.
My husband was killed. But then not only that, do I forgive the person that did it? What does that look like? You know, these are the kinds of things that happen that we have to work through. And like I said, these ages don't mean anything. You might have, but it's rare that somebody in their late teens or 20s is going to be at this place because they just haven't experienced. They haven't been to Afghanistan and served yet. I know they are now, but I'm just saying, but it's rare that people can see these things because they haven't been there yet. Sometimes people that have had tragedy growing up get different places quicker than others. So they understand suffering and the lessons of it. But anyway, whole different thing. What's our nickname for these guys? Mature.
For me, that phase was my setting concrete phase.
Huh?
I was setting my faith in concrete on that one during that time.
Setting
In concrete, setting my faith in concrete.
Just being very faithful.
Being faithful.
Kind of in the storms. The last one. Stage 6, what does that look like? According to Fowler.
It is a rare person who reaches this stage of faith. James Fowler describes people at this stage as having a special grace that makes them seem more lucid, more simple, and yet somehow more fully human than the rest of us. People at this stage can become religious leaders, teachers, because they have the ability to relate to anyone at any stage and from any faith. They are able to relate without condescension, but at the same time are able to challenge the assumptions that those of other stages might have. People at this stage cherish life, but also do not hold on to life too tightly. They put their faith in action, challenging the status quo and working to create justice in the world.
What's our nickname for these folks? The rare birds?
Enlightened.
Enlightened.
It does me good hearing that because that just describes, John, Ted, and Jay in a nutshell.
That's an odd bird. That's not a rare bird.
That's correct.
Those are odd birds.
We used to call them elders.
Elders. First thing I thought of was some of these people sit on their porches. If you've been on many porches, you find some of these folks, and they're not always loud people. They might have been loud at one point, but they're just mellowed out. Enlightened elders.
And in this phase, I find that those people are flowers, Flowers. They realize that your faith is concrete, but your religion is not. That people are different and at different phases. And although you may not agree with them, with someone you're speaking to, your faith is solid enough to listen to their perspective and support them, as opposed to just having to be right when they're in this category.
So there is a lot here. And I just wanted just to glance at this. For us, with the adults this morning, we were seeing in and they may have learners in all these places. And just a reminder that these aren't judgment call, these aren't judgments as good, bad, these are just descriptions. And for us as children and adult children and youth leaders, some of these, I want you to see this whole picture so you can think about yourself. Because we do need to be conscious of our spiritual growth. But for our participants in our classes and groups that we lead, where are they here and see some of the characteristics of the faith that they may develop there. There's this whole thing that the Southern Baptist Convention does called levels of biblical learning. We'll look at that in a session, and they go through, at this age, this is what they can understand about these theological concepts, and this is how it manifests itself. And it's really interesting. Just wanted to kind of get a little introduction to that so that we can realize that we're in different places. For what we're doing, you know, in our church-wide, realize everybody in our church is in different places. And giving that grace, giving that space for that to be true, to happen so that we can all grow. All right? Just take that chart with you, look it over. Google James Fowler. Like I said, since the 80s, there's been a whole body of literature come out after about that kind of thing. So finally, I just wanted to wrap up here, thinking about our theological rocks for just a minute. And let me pull that up just a second. We'll pull this one up already. Didn't do this with the adults this morning. This is for us. What did we do with them this morning? We did. Oh, we did.
Anchoring.
We did more on. Hey, we're all in different places. Realize that about your students.
Like Colossians, Ephesians, and Romans.
Wanted to look with us when they spend this little piece on our theological wall was a couple things that we build our children and student ministries on. One is this idea of letting the families and the parents, equipping them to be the primary disciple makers in their home. And whatever paradigm we have in our mind that if we think, you know, our classes where there's faith development is going to happen, I like to think of the equation, the fraction 1/168. 1 hour, if you got your kids an hour out of the week, guess how many other hours there are in the week? 168 hours a week. We got one of them. So whatever's going on that other time is going to be their major influence. And in most kids' lives, that's their parents. The major influence in most kids, even today, is still their parents. So part of our job as facilitators for children and youth is to minister to the parents. And those little pieces that all of our curriculum comes with nowadays, the send home piece, the parent piece, you know, finding a way to get that in their hands and let them know how to use it, or modifying that somehow. Anything we can do to engage the parents to be the primary disciples so that home is a place of worship, that home is a place of discipleship, that home is a place of Bible reading, Bible learning, and we're to come alongside folks here, encouraging for an hour out of 168 and reinforcing it. But it is a partnership. So that's one of the big things about our children and student ministry is knowing that the families are the primary disciple makers and partnering with their families. And we've got a lot of growing to do in that area. And then these theological rocks, some of y'all who's seen these before? Some of y'all have seen it before. We try to bring this up from time to time. And this was specifically for the middle school, high school ministry. If you're in children's ministry, preschool, you might want to think these through and just never have been able to convene we have a youth leadership ministry team help come up with these, and we adopted these. God's unconditional love. God loves you no matter what. And what these are theological rocks. Everything that we do should play off one of these. If I'm doing a retreat, or if we're going to go to soda pops one night, whatever activity I'm choosing to do, the 1 hour I've got, if it can't fall into one of these categories, I probably need to be doing something else. You know, if I'm doing a game just to do a game, they can do that anyway. We've got them for an hour. Let's make sure it's being filtered through this. God's unconditional love. God loves you no matter what. God wants to be known and is revealed most clearly through Jesus in Scripture. So the Bible learning that we do is important. We're very Bible-based in most everything we do. That's kind of our starting point as Baptists. So the place we have kept sometimes in Baptist life is revealed most clearly through Jesus in Scripture. There's a little this, where some people will say, well, the Bible says, I can point about, I can make the Bible say about anything, but if I'm pointing people to Christ, that's the filter through which all that runs. God is worthy of a life of worship. Worship is huge. There's a whole thing to unpack on why we worship and how we worship and what worship is. We're made for a relationship with God. We're trying to point these kids to Christ and with others. So big a deal for our kids, their relationship with their family, mom and dad. As they grow older in their teen years, it becomes their peers. And, you know, later on, their families. But that whole idea of their relationship with God and others, we're called to rejoin God's mission through service. And God has a purpose for you, that they are one of God's children, that they have an identity in Christ. And God's calling us to serve Him through serving others. That's why we do our mission trips. That's why we do mission activities, teaching with the kids. How do we join this mission? So that's our theological rocks, and I meant to put those in your packet there. Didn't make it to that one. But like I said, if you're planning your events, whatever they are, prayer, study, worship, fun time, run it through this filter. If it can't be tied to one of these, set that part aside or somehow tie it into one of these. Most things can be. The nights that we go and eat ice cream over there,